So here I'm working on a Propex HS2000. Pretty much working with a Harbor Freight Apache Case. It's not the extra large one, it's the large one. I tried to save as much space as I could during this. Cool. So just a little precursor to this build. I wanted to have heat for the tent in fall, midwinter, and early spring. So I had some options to keep myself and everybody else warm. And I really didn't want to carry around another source of fuel. So I know diesel heaters are kind of the go-to for tent heating, especially in the winter time, and they work fantastic. I just wanted to explore another option and kind of make use of something that I'm already carrying as a fuel, which is propane. So I figured I'd give this a shot, and yeah, okay. So here I'm putting together all the fitments for all the exhaust and intake hoses that are going to need to come in and out of the box. I'm just taking measurements, pretty much lining up everything. You'll see later on that I did go off a little bit on those intake and exhaust combustion routes. Nothing that I guess a little silicone couldn't seal up. Again, I wanted to make this a waterproof enclosure, able to be outside in the rig and in all sorts of conditions, especially snow or rain. And so, making sure that things were pretty precise was definitely important. Here I'm testing caps. So this way, if I want to leave the unit on the rig, but I don't want to leave a whole bunch of hoses hanging outside of it, in that case, what I can do is use rubber caps. A lot of these I ordered from China, but they work splendidly. These are the silicone intake and exhaust flumes that are for the inside the tent. Here you'll see the hoses, combustion hoses again. Just making sure everything fits. I'm going to route everything. In the end, this thing looks like a mad science project, but it works really well. So I'm really happy with how things ended up turning out. Here I'm working on the electrical connections. The Propex HS2000 has 2 electrical connections that you'll need to make. I needed to obviously make those waterproof as well, even though they're at the bottom of the box. In hindsight, I would have actually put them somewhere on the side, because now if I want to stand the box up like a suitcase almost, it runs into the covers of those electrical connections. If I take the covers off, it stands up just fine, but the covers kind of make it a little wobbly if I wanted to just stand it up like a suitcase somewhere in the rig. So something to note. I'll have links to all these parts that I used in the description below. This way, you guys, if you need some recommendations, or you could just always drop me a comment and ask. I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible and give you all the info on the stuff that I use. But yeah, pretty much a lot of this stuff, eBay, Amazon, just fittings, measurements and fittings. Again, so the Propex uses 2 types of connection. One connection is going to be for the thermostat, which I think is a 5 or 6 pin connection that you'll need to solder into this waterproof little connection plug. And then there's also the positive and the negative for the power for it. So pretty simple, not too bad. I think the hardest or most challenging part of this was to, figure out how I was going to route the hoses, either outside of the box or inside of the box, how I was going to cap everything off, and then fitting the unit inside the enclosure securely. Again, this is something that, although I don't know how often I'm going to do it, because it is pretty pretty quick to be able to take down. It's just 4 bolts with wing nuts. So I just, tighten the wing nuts and it secures to my outside molle panel. But should, in the event that I do drive off with it connected, I want it to be stable inside that box. No rattling around, no movement. I mean, this is for an off-road vehicle, so it needs to have some pre-qualifiers, I guess, when it comes to being stable and durable. Here I'm making the soldering connection points to those waterproof connectors. These things are great. I'm a big fan of them. My friend Chase, he recommended them. He's got a Sickle GX that he wheels, and he builds diesel heaters as well, and he highly recommended these as well. And they're great. You just twist them right in and they make the electrical connection. They're super secure and also super waterproof and weatherproof, which is ideal for this kind of build. One thing about getting older, I have to take my glasses off for anything I do up close now, which is kind of funny. It makes me laugh a little bit. For me to be able to see things up close, I have to be able to not use my far-sighted glasses. So yeah, here I'm just choosing the locations that I'm gonna mount these holes. I figured out the size of them. I used either a step bit or a regular drill bit and just drilled through. And then also, the 4 little mounting points around it. These come with a rubber gasket, which keeps, everything sealed up nice and tight. Again, if you do this in hindsight, I would put these on the side of, not the bottom of the case. This is going to be a long video, friends. I really wanted to kind of dig deep into this because I haven't seen it done before. I've seen, the custom diesel heater builds, and those are really cool too. This is a little different though, and Propex is a pretty popular propane heating element for like van builds. And whatnot, and just for like off-road trailers and all of that stuff. So I wanted to incorporate this into just our standard Toyotas or Jeeps, and be able to attach it on the outside. Propex makes a outside one as well. This is not that. These are expensive units, so they might not be for everybody. I try and get as high quality as I can within a budget. And this, I found lightly used off of eBay. Someone had it, so I think I paid around like $400 or $500. These are typically around $800, I think. So all in all, I've got a $1,000 box on the side of my rig with this build, and I obviously take that into consideration. If I leave it, wheeling, and attached to the rig, but you'll see how I kind of mounted things a little bit later and secured things. I think what I might do is eventually fill this either with foam or some kind of like either spray foam or like padding or something, in case this ever does go down. It'll have, at least a fighting chance. I wouldn't suspect that it'll make it always. All right, so prior to this, I ended up just cutting some aluminum. I was debating, one of the debates here was either to go with steel or aluminum. For obviously, aluminum's much lighter. Unfortunately, I don't have an aluminum welder at the house. I don't have a spool gun. So that left my options a little bit, made them at least a little bit more complicated when it came to having to drill holes and figuring out how things were going to mount up. Had I had a welder, I would have just welded all these pieces together nice and easy. I think I used like a 3/4 inch flat aluminum bar, about an 1/8 inch thick, And then I also think I used, I want to say either 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch square aluminum tube. And those just kind of made the mounting brackets for this unit. And here you can see me kind of figuring out how I'm going to get this locked in this box so there's no play. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It's not too complicated. Again, in hindsight, I would have aluminum welded this stuff, but I wanted to keep the weight down, so that's why I didn't use steel. I had both on hand though, ready to go. A big thing with these projects is try and get all the materials, even if it means returning a few things. Try and get all the materials that you could possibly use in your possession and ready to go. So this way, if you need to do something on the fly, you don't either have to run to the store if it's late at night when, you know, kids are in bed. You don't have to worry about needing some things. I think it took about like 2 to 3 days to kind of just put this all together in between, you know, life stuff. Get this all dialed in. And then of course it took more time to fit up. And here I'm just making sure that my brackets are clean. One of the things when you work for a fabricator is you got to make sure that everything is, you know, there's no burrs or anything. So just make sure that everything is clean and tidy. The Propex comes with 2 mounting brackets on the top. You can see those silver things. Those I utilized as well. Pretty much I just made 4 kind of bridges, and then, you know, that's what's going to keep the unit kind of suspended inside the enclosure. Of course, I used tape to like thick foam tape to pad those bridges, those trusses, pretty much. So this way, you know, vibrations don't end up damaging or rattling the unit. And what those will do is just kind of, you know, dampen any kind of vibrations that go on. This is probably the longest part of it. It was just, you know, making an enclosure. I'm sure, you know, a CNC machine could probably make a bracket very quickly. I don't have one of those, so everything I do I have to just make custom and handmade. A lot of this was working in the wee hours of the morning, and late into the night, but it's something, you know, I was passionate about and wanted to get done. And you'll see in the end, it's an absolute game changer when you have heat inside your tent, so it was all very much worth it. So here I'm using rib nuts in place of bolt nuts, mostly because that square tube, it would be very hard. It would be definitely a pain to be able to, you know, stick a nut on the bottom end of it and be able to lock things down. So here, again, rib nuts for the win. Makes things incredibly simple if you need to, you know, tap into something and use a bolt. And it's just really hard to kind of get to a nut behind it. keep in mind, this enclosure is not something that I want to open and close, if at all, except for servicing. Every time I do, I have to make sure seals are good and everything else. So I needed to keep that in mind while, installing brackets and bridges and trusses and all of that kind of stuff, all the ports and everything. I want this sealed, so of course it has, a good gasket around the outside edge, but every single hole that I make, I'm going to have to reinforce and make sure it stays sealed. So the idea here is simplicity, and keeping this thing able to not have to be opened frequently in order to work with. So set it and forget it kind of status. I think these brackets took about 2 times for me for trial and error. I think I cut some bar and some tube, and I think, if I remember clearly, it didn't fit ideally. I think I just made lemonade out of lemons kind of, and worked it together. Now I'm working on the top brackets here. These were a little bit more simple, but again, I have to make sure that all my holes in this case are precise. I can't redo anything. This case is like $50-$60, and it's not something that you want to just keep on buying because you misaligned a hole. So precision is definitely a factor here with this. This is where having a shop and a bench top would really be beneficial. Having to kind of sit and squat and do all of this over and over for hours upon hours can definitely get to you. But, again, make lemonade out of lemons. Yeah, and I definitely make a mess out of the house every single time. Nothing that a little cleaning can't handle though. Another factor, I know I was saying something about, not having to open this case for anything. The fact is sometimes you have to. I know with the Propex, if something sets off a trigger, you need to kind of open this little portal door inside of it and reset things. If that's the case, I also have to keep that in mind during the build as well. I needed to make this accessible, but not frequently accessible, to the point where, it opened itself up to, inclement weather. Another part of this, when you're fabricating and designing things that you've never seen built before, usually at the beginning, it's kind of looking at it for a while, figuring out your options, making a move, deciding to go that route, and seeing if it works, and just going along for the ride. That's one of the things I love about this. So here you can see it's a new day. Brackets seem to fit good. Everything looks secure. Everything's held in. Now I'm just making sure the fitment of the Propex heater fits the box when it's closed. So here you can see me. I'm flapping pretty much some of that aluminum tube just to sand it down quite a bit to make sure everything fits ideally. Not too tight, not too loose. Keeping in mind for the foam padding I'm going to put in as well. Making provisions for everything. These are the mounting holes for the top bracket. These are what's going to secure it in place in the enclosure from outside of the enclosure. Here you can see also as I'm closing it that those intake and exhaust combustion outlets, they're not in the ideal location. I messed up a little bit on that. I went a little too wild with the Dremel. For this build, the Dremel is pretty much absolutely necessary. You're going to need to work things, and it just makes it really easy to kind of get into tight little places when it comes to cutting and sanding. Obviously the enclosure is ABS plastic, so it's easy to get through. You just need to be precise again. Things are just starting to come together step by step. I think that's what keeps me going with a lot of these builds, is I keep on seeing it start to work out and get closer and closer, and I just can't stop at that point. I love building these things. Seeing something come out of nothing. There's so many ways this could be done, and I'm sure there's better ways than the way that I did. And in hindsight, I'm thinking I could have just made a template out of cardboard and probably made it a little bit easier on myself. Make sure that all the holes lined up and they were where I wanted them. But again, usually I just I see a route and I start to go with it, and I think of all the tools and strategies that I've learned and used before, or have been taught, and I apply those as they kind of arise. And this is an example of that. Designing things like this is a constant dance between, what you've done and what you can do, or vice versa. Getting closer. I think I'm using just 1/4 bolts that I attached to those brackets, which I attached to the mounting brackets of the Propex itself. So, I'm dealing with that 1/4-inch hole, and those things need to be precise, and thankfully those worked out really precise. I think it's funny how I was able to line up the 1/4-inch holes perfectly, and yet those bigger intake and exhaust combustion holes, not so much. But again, just working with what you've done and what you can do. And there it is, closed up. Everything feels good, looks good. It's kind of exactly what I was wanting and looking for. Here I'm putting on all the hose clamps prior to the build. So this way, when I have it out in the field and I want to use it, everything's ready to go. Constantly keeping the end goal in sight while preparing and testing and all that. So yeah, I'm testing my HVAC hoses. These are just dryer hoses that you can get, and those will I'm just measuring lengths at this point. I know the distance I need from the tent that these need to extend off the rig. More worm clamps and those hold the what's it called, the mounts that mount the ducts into the tent. Just about time to test the unit, which is probably one of my favorite parts. Again, maybe not the best thing to be doing inside a house, but I had the room to myself, so I got to make a mess. Since everything is in silicone and sealed up, it's very easy to pull the unit in and out of the box at this point. As soon as the silicone goes on, and it's more of a semi-permanent structure, and, you know, opening and removing the unit from the enclosure becomes a little bit more cumbersome. All right, painting the brackets, getting towards the finish line here. I think it's been a few days, things have dried. Either that or I'm just testing the unit, I think, while they're drying. Using a little bit of plumber's tape. This is the yellow Teflon tape for that propane fitting. You see my Ignic propane canister, nice, small, compact. Checking all connections, and of course testing this inside the house, which I don't advise. At least have that exhaust hose outside. You'll see I open up the door. I'm just running a trial just to make sure everything works before I go and take the time to seal everything up. If there's anything that I need to troubleshoot, I do it now. All right, guys, so after way too much time and probably way too much money, but yeah, no one's counting, right? I finally got the Propex heater mounted to the rig. I'm really excited. It's kind of like the final stretch here. But yeah, so I had to, do a few modifications for the molly panel. This is likely because I don't have a Sherpa rack, and a lot of stuff is made for the extruded aluminum, like wider racks. My rack is an LFD rack. Quick little thing about just some of the sealant that I used. I believe I used the Permatex. That's the high temp red that you see on the right one. That's because that's going to get really, really hot. I think for the left, I just used like black RTT silicone. That stays fairly cool. That's the intake combustion hose. So that's where, it pulls air in and turns, mixes it with the propane, to create the combustion, and then that's where the fire begins. Cool. So I really quickly wanted to kind of go over how much this all cost. I paid around $400 to $500 for the Propex heater. I got that secondhand, which was a really good deal. It was barely used. Generally, they go for around $700, $800 to about $1,000 nowadays. It's a UK-based company. They've been doing this a long time for like RVs and vans and all that kind of stuff. So they're solid, and I didn't stinge on that. About $200 to $250 for materials, all hardware, hoses, clamps, sealants. And I think the Harbor Freight box was around $50 to $60. So materials around $250, so about $750 all in, which I think is pretty. The Propex heater is finally mounted, and I'm gonna hook everything up. It's getting dark out, so I'd like to kind of get it onto the tent. We got our electricity ready to go. These two ports, this is gonna power the Propex, and this is gonna line up the thermostat. So this is like a 7-pin or a 5-pin, I forget, and right here, and this is obviously gonna be my 12-volt, which is coming from this right here. So and that's already tied into the auxiliary battery. So everything should be good. As far as the molly here, there's room for a little bit of change. I got some kind of like wing nut bolts. These are wing nut quarter 20s that I used, and I used plus nuts on the inside of this case. Essentially what I would do is like to do Loctite. It is a little bit of a pain in the butt to get this over, get this on and off of this molly. I thought it would be a little bit simpler, but there's really not much room. If you can see that, it's probably maybe a half an inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch at most. So what I do is I pull up these suction cups, and I could pry this and bend this just a little bit. It's an aluminum, panel, so it does bend. It has a little bit of play, and I could slip my tiny hands back there and kind of twist the wing nuts. But it's a pain in the butt, for sure. So, putting this on and off, I think is going to be annoying. This is only about 16 pounds. The heater, so it should be the panel is rated for 30 pounds, but seeing as how I've compromised some things up top, it's not directly mounted to the rack. I don't know if I'm gonna trust that, because this is like $1,000 unit on the, and so it feels nice and sturdy. And the only thing that's happening is that little plastic, the nylon for the wing nut, is hitting the glass in the back there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pad it for now, and I might just take this off for tomorrow. But lots of progress. I finally get to test this thing out. So intake and exhaust, that's going to be my exhaust. So that's where the heat's going to go in. And this is where it's going to recirculate. So rather than just taking cold air from outside, obviously during the winter right now it's kind of nice out, but rather than just keep on trying to heat up cold air, it's going to actually take the hot air that's from inside the tent, and it's going to make it even hotter. So that's how the HVAC system is going to go. So yeah, I'm going to hook all this up. I'll get some video of that, and we'll see how this turns out. I'm really excited to see this work. So yeah, this is where one of these is a 12 volt, one is like the 7-pin or the 6-pin for the thermostat. And this is going to be the first time. This is the propane in, and it's going to be interesting. It shouldn't be using too much, so we'll see. I believe I should label these, which would be the smart thing. But I believe this is the exhaust and this is the intake. So I'll get all that figured out and report back. All right. Thanks, guys. So we're gonna hook this up. This is my bag of all the stuff that needs to go for this. Yeah, let's just see how this turns out here. This is gonna be interesting, I'm sure. All right. I think I'm gonna label those real quick. Man, working at night. Probably not the smartest move, but okay. Honestly, I don't think it's necessary because these will, it'll still recirculate no matter what because it's going into the tent. So let's try this out. I am so excited to get this going. All right, so this is, whoo, can't see shit. This is the, this gets hot. So this is gonna be the intake tube. And essentially you're supposed to throw it over this sleeve, but I don't know. It's actually pretty warm out tonight, so. But it's better to be prepared when it does get cold versus it being snowing outside and super cold and then us not having heat. So this, I guess essentially, this is like, this keeps it warm. Hold on. So this is the exhaust. And I have the red heat stuff in here, so we'll always know that this is for the exhaust. And that just jams right in there. Silicone sleeve. So this is the kind of, maybe if the kids are around, they don't get burnt. And this is going to be exhaust gases. This is the stuff we do have to watch. So essentially, what I'll do is I'll twist this down. So this way, this is going down. And that's like the propane air that we don't want to breathe. This is combustion in. So this is combustion intake. I'll make sure Savannah's doing okay. And this whole system, this whole box is waterproof. So obviously we want to be able to use it when it's snowing and raining and all that stuff. So we'll see how this pans out. And there's some parameters we want for this stuff, and I don't remember what they are because it's been a hot minute since I've put all this together. But these are the electrical connectors. One is a Anderson to a 2-pin, so positive and negative. That's for the power for the Propex, and then this is a 7-pin. I believe there's only 6 for the thermostat though, and these are all waterproof. We got these, yeah, so waterproof, nice. Oh God, it's like right there. I might have to kill those lights. Okay, there's this. All right, and everything's down here for the connectors. Nice and easy. Love it. Love it when stuff does work. Not always, but keep that from away from the exhaust valve.
So that's this one up here is the exhaust. It's hot, so you'll notice these are smoking. I think it's just because they're new. Obviously all this is new. This is the exhaust combustion pipe, and that is also extremely hot. So right now I'm testing, just making sure everything's going. But yeah, it's smoking, man. I think it's okay. I'm gonna be running it. I'm not gonna leave it running tonight, that's for sure. I might switch it on and off just to kind of see, but other than that, everything else is running freaking splendid. It is so toasty in that tent, it's unbelievable. So I'm really excited about this. It smells like something though. So this tube right here, that's the exhaust tube. That's what's going into the tent. It doesn't smell inside the tent at all. But this is just hot, so it might just be the temperature difference that's causing all of this. I'm not too sure, so still running tests, but yeah, and that's the combustion exhaust. So that's hot. That little blue area, that's a silicone sleeve. That's from the manufacturer, so that should be getting as hot as it does. But yeah, I don't know if you heard it just shut off. So I don't know if that means it reached temperature or if this thing overheated, but we'll find out.
Okay guys, so I wanted to kind of give a rundown of how everything went. Everything with the heater is great. It ended up keeping the tent completely warm overnight, and it seems to be running absolutely great. I love it. The thing is, after all the work I did on the tent to make sure that everything could connect, I ended up switching tents to a wedge style. I ended up going with the Roof Nest Falcon that I found. So now I have to kind of reroute a few things, and it's not a problem. You know, this is kind of part of the industry that we work in and live in, and it wouldn't be fun if we weren't constantly making changes. But so yeah, so you know, I didn't get to use it this previous winter, but during the fall when I did use it, it worked really great. It was really great on power consumption. It didn't use much electricity at all. And the thermostat seemed to work perfect as well, and it kept the tent so great. So I would call this an absolute win. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to get this out in case someone's thinking about doing something like this. If you want, contact me. I could help you kind of design the brackets and you know, help you with parts and pieces that you may or may not need to get this going. In hindsight, I don't think I would change anything except for making sure those holes were better drilled. The intake and exhaust combustion holes inside the cover of the box. Other than that, just because it would make it a little bit simpler every time I needed to open and close the container, which isn't often. But every time I need to open and close the enclosure, you know, I do have to reseal those up because they're, you know, they're sealed with silicone, which, you know, keeps the weather out, but at the same time, you know, they can get flimsy because the silicone and, you know, the plastic aren't like a true bond. It's just a, you know, a weatherproof seal more so. As far as overheating and that smoke, that all went away. I think that was just kind of new materials being heated up, and potentially steam. But I don't even think it was steam, honestly. I think it was just, you know, new materials. But yeah, none of that ever became a problem. The box is doing great, and yeah, so I'd call this a win. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this was a bit lengthy, but you know, this was kind of a big one for me. It was important, and now, you know, I have permanent heating in a nice little small enclosure that you know, I could keep me and the family warm if we ever want to go, you know, camping and wheeling kind of in the fall and the winter. So really simple, really clean, and yeah, cool. All right, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you want to see more, leave a comment, ask any and all questions. I'm here to help, and I hope you guys really like this. All right, thanks again so much.